Hi guys, my name is Ishan and I'm one of the 32 change makers of the FAIR project. Just before starting my address today, I would just like to thank the FAIR project for everything they've done over the last few months in teaching us the FAIR methodology of looking at interesting topics and how to approach them, and actually even entertaining viewpoints which may not have been our own, and as a result really getting a stronghold in the positions we hold. So without wasting a lot of time, I would like to start with my address today, which is a dialogue between equality and equity, and why I feel this is so important in the society we live in today. Just before starting off, I have a notepad with me. So if I am looking down a few times, it's just because there are a few points here, and I don't want to I don't want to miss things when in my 12-minute address. So yeah, I'll start off really then. So, what to me is equality and what to me is equity? So, first of all, I would like to break it down into two of these sub sentences, sub ways of looking at things. So, and this is the aspect of equality of opportunity versus equality of outcome, or equality of opportunity and equality of outcome rather. So, I am all for equality of opportunity, and I think any sane person in society would be for equality of opportunity, which is to say that every individual in society should be getting the same opportunity in in society basically. So this can be things like education, healthcare. So there shouldn't be any discrimination for individuals when they are applying for certain posts, etc., etc. What I am not for is equality of outcome, which suggests that outcomes have to be same. As an example would be, let's say if you are walking into an industry, there should be 50% men and 50% women in that industry, which I'm totally not for, because it totally goes against some of the things that it doesn't account for. So yeah, that's all the address I want to make today. So why am I for equality of opportunity? First of all, because as I said, because we would be foolish not to use any aspect of society, be it women, be it people in religious minorities, be it people in in the LGBTQ community, in any community really. We have to use every single individual in society to best maximize a society in creating new technology, creating new art, just making society more prosperous. And any individual in society would be short-sighted in not optimally using all parts of society in that sense. What I feel the equality of outcome people miss out on is that they feel that when you account for equality of opportunity, you will simply get equality of outcome, which is totally wrong. I'm all for, first of all, that doesn't happen. So when you account for equality of opportunity, you do not get equality of outcome. And when we've actually seen societies, the more egalitarian societies, let's say, account for equality of opportunity, they rather get inequality of outcome. So the point I'm trying to make is that when we actually account for equality of opportunity, we would get results which we wouldn't have expected at all. And so the main problem I have here is with enforced equality of outcome. Let's just get that clear. So why do I think equality of outcome is such a bad doctrine? First of all, when we look at the most hotly debated topic right now, in terms of group identity, which is men and women. Okay, so everyone thinks. So there are. I wouldn't say everyone. That's probably a wrong part of me. So there's a large proportion of society who feel that men and women are the same, and if provided with the opportunity, they would make similar choices if there is if social construct is taken care of. So, and this is, let's say, the anti-evolutionary standpoint that several of the social scientists and several of the people have in society. This is a totally wrong way of looking at things, because there have been several studies done, and the most comprehensive of studies was done in Scandinavia, where there was a correlation of 0.7, which is the highest correlation to be ever found. This is as true as psychological fact or sociological fact can be, higher than predicting IQ and academic results, and academic results really, was the differences that men and women had in temperament and personality. So and the fact and the study suggested that as societies got more wealthier and more egalitarian, so they accounted for all the social so for all the, as the social constructivist types would say, all the social constructs in societies, the biological differences between men and women maximized. So what this means is that when women got the opportunity to choose what they wanted to pursue in higher education and industries, even there were fewer women who enrolled into STEM fields than would have seen before. So what this resulted in was that there were more male engineers and fewer female engineers, and more female nurses and fewer male nurses in Scandinavia. And this was nothing that, like what the social constructivists, like the social scientists and psychologists were expecting, because they had a left and you can't really point this towards a left leaning bias as well, right leaning bias as well, because all the social scientists and I would say rather most of the social scientists and psychologists are of a left leaning bend in that sense. So, and this was a shocking result to be found out. So when we say that we want 50% men and 50% women in a particular industry, just for this particular example, we aren't simply looking at the best way, because if we have a pool of, let's say, 100 individuals, and we have to choose 50 individuals for a particular industry, let's say engineering, like let's say an engineering particular job in that sense, and of that 100 and of that populace of 175 of them are men and 25 are women. There is, and if you account for with competence, it is on a probabilistic level, it is almost certain that 3/4 of the population getting those jobs would be men. So the point I'm trying to make here is that I am all for society for choosing. If there is a particular job and it requires 100 candidates, it doesn't matter to me if there are 99 men and one female candidate, or on the contrary, if there are 99 female candidates and one male candidate. I wouldn't want to be living in a society where individuals rather, get discriminated against simply because of the way they orient themselves. This could be in terms of their genders, in terms of their ethnicities, in terms of their religious leanings, in terms of political leanings, whatnot. So that's a really important thing to put forward, and without that, I feel that it would become really horrific if we went down simply dividing by group identities. Why do I feel this? Is because first of all, how many group identities would you account for? We are talking about men and women right now, but then there are so many other ways of looking at it. I mean, the radical leftist types talk about that looking at people in a victim oppressor narrative is the only way of looking at the world. And what that does is that when you start accounting for the group identities, you started off with sex, there is gender, there is let's say nationalities, there is ethnicities, there's religious leanings. So the point I'm trying to make here is that we will inevitably keep creating more and more of these identities as we start going by the egalitarian way of looking at the world and trying to make society more equitable. So, and what happens then? If I am an individual, I may as well be part of multiple groups. So a clear example here could be, we started off with, let's say, women in politics as a measure. Someone can easily come up and say, but what about black women in politics? And then another person can come up and say, what about the black LGBTQ women in politics? Another person can come up and say, what about the black Asian LGBTQ women in politics? So this can keep trickling down until and unless we come down to the individual, which is what I always enforce, is that when you are looking for anyone in a particular job or anyone in a particular industry, and you want to be basing them, you have to be basing them as an individual and on their competence, because other than that, we will not be getting anywhere. I understand that there is a lower representation of certain people in certain industry, but that is, in my opinion, because of inherent choice of some individuals not wanting to go into some industries. And to cure that, we have to have equal opportunities on the grassroots level. So equal education for everyone. But as I mentioned with the Scandinavian study, that will not account for equality of outcome. Why do I feel equality of outcome is such a, not only a bad way of looking at the world, but also it can also become a very horrific way of looking at the world. And the radical leftists who actually propagate, and the egalitarian types who propagate this idea of equality of outcome, don't actually know the severity at which historically we have gone into making societies more egalitarian. So I would like to point forward works of Dostoevsky and Solzhenitsyn. This is especially in relation to Soviet Russia. So Solzhenitsyn wrote this brilliant book called The Gulag Archipelago, where he outlined how how Soviet Russia went beyond anyone really in making society egalitarian, and the steps they took are totally horrific. And this is the sort of doctrine I feel society will go down into if we do go down through the equality of outcome doctrine. And what happened was that in Soviet Russia, there were 6 million Ukrainians who died, 6 million kulaks who died, and this is a horrific number which no one talks about, which none of the Marxists talks about. None of the Marxists talk about, because they feel that the Soviet Russia's representation of Marxism wasn't the true representation of Marxism, which is a totally wrong way of looking at history. So what actually happened was that these peasant farmers who were actually competent peasant farmers, and were actually I think the number was something like they were contributing to 85 to 90% of the food that was grown in Soviet Russia. And I think there were only 5% of the farmers who were contributing to 85 or 80% of the food grains that were grown in Russia, were labeled as oppressors, because it was almost like they'd oppressed every other farmer, every other individual in society to reach where they had, and not because they were inherently more competent than others in society. So what this did was that there were mobs that were released on these peasantries, on these kulaks, and were killed alive because they had basically a few square meters above what was actually allowed in society. And this simply went to such a bad road of looking at things, that women were actually pregnant women's who were starving, and whose children were starving, who went out on the fields to pick up some grains which were not sent in, let's say, to the authorities to divide it equitably to society, were and the authorities sent in individuals who went to these farms and shot these pregnant ladies from their back. So the point I'm trying to make is that when we try to make society more equitable, we will simply keep going down into loops. Because to what extent are you going to be making society more egalitarian? Is it simply on money? Is it on happiness? There is no way we can say that when we look at individuals, there is something I have and something that the other doesn't have. So it's really difficult to get a level ground on that sense. I think I've gone over my time here. This is something I would like to explore much more, but these are some reasons why I feel equality of opportunity is the best way of looking at the world. But we have to understand equality of outcome will not be achieved. If it's great if it's achieved, but it shouldn't be enforced rather in society. Thank you, and sorry for taking a couple of extra minutes.